Welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases.
Yeah, and today we're reviewing a lesson deck from SpeakDuo, and you can go to speakduo.com to meet new people from around the world who are practicing English on video calls to become more confident with their English-speaking abilities.
Exactly. So let's just jump right into the feedback because our goal today is to elevate this solid foundation into a truly masterful educational experience.
Right, we want to really maximize the impact here.
Yeah, so as I understand it from the notes, the argument here is that the lesson is anchored in British comedy, specifically the sophisticated wordplay of Fry and Laurie.
That's clearly laid out. I wonder, though, if we've considered how the subsequent vocabulary actually matches that highly specific comedic premise.
Right, because, well, it doesn't really. The stated theme of British comedy wordplay does not align with the actual vocabulary presented in the lesson.
Exactly. It's an expectation thing. The title explicitly promises an exploration of, wordplay and innuendos on a bit of Fry and Laurie.
Which sounds super specific.
Right. It sets an expectation for highly nuanced, culturally specific humor, or like double meanings.
Yeah.
But then you look at the actual expressions taught in the slides, things like to muck around or to try your hand at something.
Or to make someone's blood run cold.
Yeah, these are just standard, everyday conversational idioms. So there's this massive disconnect between the promise of the title and the reality of the content.
I hear you, but if the creator pulled those specific phrases from a transcript of a Fry and Laurie sketch, doesn't that justify it?
It's a fair question, but it really comes down to learner trust. Like, imagine signing up for a masterclass on the culinary secrets of French fine dining.
Okay.
And then the first lesson is just how to chop an onion.
Oh, I see.
Right? Yes, French chefs chop onions, but it's not the secret you were promised. If you promise advanced learners complex comedic innuendo and deliver standard idioms, you risk them disengaging before you even really start.
They'll feel like it's too basic for them?
Exactly. Simply because the framing set the wrong expectation.
That makes a lot of sense. So we need to realign the lesson's vocabulary to explicitly match the stated theme, or conversely, adjust the title and framing to accurately reflect the general conversational nature of the idioms.
Spot on. So for concrete examples, if they want to keep the British comedy theme, the creator could include actual script excerpts or, like, video clips from the show.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, they could analyze the specific innuendos used in those scenes.
And if they just want to teach the idioms?
Then rename the lesson to something more accurate, like mastering everyday idioms for casual conversation, and just frame the intro around practical daily use.
Yeah, I think that second option is probably much easier to execute.
Totally.
Okay, so moving on. Let's look closely at the section discussing breakout rooms 1 through 4, where the creator has mapped out teaching 2 idioms, running an icebreaker, and going straight to a breakout.
Right. Is there a risk that focusing solely on immediate practice might overlook the cognitive disruption of constantly stopping and starting?
Definitely. The repetitive structure of introducing just 2 expressions, followed immediately by a lengthy breakout room, disrupts the overall pacing and cognitive flow of the lesson.
It's just so fragmented.
Exactly. Placing a 10 to 12-minute breakout session after every single pair of idioms, so after 1 and 2, then again after 3 and 4, it just prevents the student from building a broader contextual vocabulary before practicing.
And it consumes a massive amount of class time with transitions.
Right. And what happens in the breakout room?
Exactly. It probably used the 2 idioms in the first minute and then stall.
Exactly. It leads to repetitive or stalled conversations.
So to fix this, we should consolidate the instructional phases and the practice phases to create a more immersive, sustained, and challenging learning environment.
How would that look?
Instead of 4 separate 10-minute breakout rooms, group 4 to 5 expressions together under a specific situational theme.
Like what?
Like workplace challenges or unexpected events. Teach that block and follow it with 1 comprehensive 20-minute breakout session.
Oh, I like that.
Task them with a continuous role-play scenario, such as resolving a conflict with a boss or recounting a stressful travel story. That requires them to naturally weave multiple new phrases into a single flowing conversation.
That mirrors real life so much better.
Yeah, it really does.
Okay, so what I really like about this next part is the inclusion of very practical icebreaker questions on the slides to prompt the usage of these idioms.
That makes sense. But could the evidence also support a different conclusion? Like the fact that these definitions need deeper linguistic context?
Absolutely. The current definitions and examples lack the necessary nuance and situational context required for advanced English learners to achieve true fluency.
Yeah, the literal meanings are technically accurate,
Right. Like defining to take someone for granted as failing to appreciate them.
but they completely miss the subtle connotations, the emotional weight, and the specific social contexts.
Advanced learners don't just need the literal definition.
Right.
They need to know the tone. Is it aggressive, casual, formal, sympathetic?
Exactly. So we need to enhance the vocabulary sections by incorporating brief comparisons to similar phrases, noting the register and explaining the nuanced emotional undertones of the expressions.
Let's run through some concrete examples from the deck to show exactly how to inject this nuance. This is critical for, high-stakes environments like talking to a boss or answering an IELTS speaking part 2 prompt.
Okay, let's start with to rub something in someone's face.
The slide defines it simply as reminding someone of a mistake.
Right, but we should explicitly contrast it with a neutral alternative, like simply to remind someone.
Yeah, because reminding is helpful. Rubbing it in their face is deliberately cruel or arrogant.
Exactly. So if an advanced learner is telling HR, my boss rubbed the error in my face, they need to know they're accusing their boss of being vindictive, not just helpful.
Huge tonal shift. Okay, what about to make someone's blood run cold?
The slide says it means sudden fear, but we should contrast it with a phrase like to give someone a fright.
Right, a fright is like dropping your keys because a door slammed.
But having your blood run cold conveys a profound, almost paralyzing sense of dread.
So for an IELTS prompt about a scary experience, you could say, realizing I had emailed the confidential client files to the wrong company made my blood run cold.
Spot on. It shows you understand the extreme scale of the emotion. What about to try your hand at something?
We should contrast this with to formally commit to something. Trying your hand implies a low-stakes, casual experimentation with a completely new skill.
So in a conversation with colleagues, you might say, I'm not looking for a career change, but I think I'll try my hand at coding this weekend.
Yeah, it signals. Don't expect me to be an expert.
Exactly. Now compare that conversational lightness to muck around.
We should probably contrast mucking around with procrastinating.
Right, because procrastinating is just avoiding a task. Mucking around is actively engaging in silly, unproductive, or lazy behavior.
So you'd tell a coworker, we were just mucking around in the break room when the CEO unexpectedly walked in.
Yeah, it paints a very specific, slightly embarrassing picture.
Okay, next up, to take someone or something for granted. The slide says it means failing to appreciate someone.
But we need to contrast this with simply ignoring someone.
Right, because taking someone for granted has that expectation of permanence.
Exactly. You ignore their value specifically because you assume they will always remain loyal.
So the manager took his top performers for granted and was completely shocked when they all resigned.
Perfect workplace example. What about to turn up somewhere?
Let's contrast this with the standard verb to arrive.
Arriving feels scheduled.
But turning up carries a nuance of surprise, casualness, or totally unexpected arrival.
Like, we planned the client dinner perfectly, and then my former boss just managed to turn up halfway through dessert.
Yes, it implies a lack of ceremony. Next is to be tied up in knots. The slide defines it as feeling anxious.
Let's contrast it with simply feeling nervous.
Nervousness is general, right? Like a flutter before a presentation.
Yeah, but being tied up in knots implies an intense, sustained physical anxiety, usually from a deep internal conflict.
So in IELTS, I was tied up in knots for weeks deciding whether to accept the overseas promotion or stay close to my aging parents.
Yes, it implies a painful twisting of priorities.
Finally, to drool over something.
We must contrast this with to admire. Admiring is respectful and professional.
Whereas drooling over something is an exaggerated, almost helpless expression of intense desire or admiration.
So with colleagues, instead of working, the entire marketing team spent an hour drooling over the new company car brochures.
Exactly. These contrasts provide immense value to the advanced learner.
I totally agree. Okay, so now we are actually going to conduct a quiz to see how well everyone absorbed these nuances.
Yes, for each question, we'll announce option A, option B, and option C. We'll repeat the relevant phrase as much as we can so you remember what you're guessing. And feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer before we give it to you.
All right, let's do this. Question 1. What is the best definition for the expression to make someone's blood run cold? To make someone's blood run cold. Is it option A, to cause a specific individual to quickly experience an intensely sudden feeling of profound fear or genuine shock? Option B, to deliberately, forcefully, physically lower the core body temperature of a deeply exhausted marathon runner in a race? Or option C, to successfully, completely, entirely, secretly suppress your genuine emotional response during a highly stressful event? Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer for to make someone's blood run cold.
And the answer is option A, to cause an intensely sudden feeling of profound fear or shock. Like when we talked about realizing you emailed the wrong client and it made your blood run cold.
Right. Okay, question 2. How is the phrase to rub something in someone's face accurately defined? To rub something in someone's face. Is it A, to physically forcefully apply a highly soothing medicinal ointment entirely into an extremely sore muscle right now? Option B, to deliberately constantly remind a certain person of their personal mistakes or past failures in a deeply cruel way? Or option C, to successfully, entirely, secretly erase incredibly sensitive financial documents long before a massive public inquiry? Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about to rub something in someone's face.
The correct answer is B, to deliberately remind someone of their mistakes in a cruel way. Remember the example of the boss rubbing the error in the employee's face during the HR meeting.
Spot on. Question 3. If someone decides to try your hand at something, what exactly are they doing? To try your hand at something. A, to successfully, effectively, aggressively, physically, totally, entirely, actively, firmly, permanently manipulate machinery. Option B, to confidently, deliberately, repeatedly, purposely, heavily, firmly, physically push a heavy wooden object across the floor. Or option C, to bravely, enthusiastically, actively, voluntarily attempt a completely new personal activity or skill for a first time. Pause the podcast here if you need more time to try your hand at something.
The answer is C, attempting a completely new skill for the first time, like trying your hand at coding over the weekend just for fun.
Question 4. What does a person mean when they decide to muck around? To muck around. Is it option A, to actively, continuously waste precious time simply by doing remarkably unproductive, totally silly, or lazy things? Option B, to thoroughly, effectively, systematically, completely, efficiently, heavily, permanently, correctly, forcefully clean a room? Or option C, to deliberately, completely, purposefully, actively, repeatedly, secretly, quietly, aggressively, entirely ruin an old project? Feel free to pause the podcast here for to muck around.
The answer is A, actively wasting time doing silly or lazy things, just like mucking around in the break room when the CEO walked in.
All right, question 5. Which of the following describes what it means to take someone or something for granted? To take someone or something for granted. Option A, to intentionally, safely, efficiently, totally, permanently, effectively, rapidly, completely, forcibly, securely transfer assets. Option B, to carelessly, completely fail to genuinely appreciate a person simply because you totally expect them to always remain. Or option C, to aggressively, intentionally, deliberately, successfully, verbally, publicly, openly, confidently, formally challenge the boss. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about to take someone or something for granted.
It's option B, failing to appreciate a person because you expect them to remain, like the manager who took his top performers for granted before they resigned.
Question 6. what occurs when a person manages to turn up somewhere? To turn up somewhere. A. To deliberately, forcefully, intensely, aggressively, dramatically, powerfully, successfully, loudly amplify a specific noise. Option B. To systematically, incredibly, practically, officially, actively, permanently, effectively, manually, securely fix a flat tire. Or option C. To surprisingly, casually, miraculously, suddenly, completely, unexpectedly, finally arrive at a highly specific destination. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about to turn up somewhere.
The answer is C. To surprisingly or unexpectedly arrive. Just like the former boss who managed to turn up halfway through dessert.
Almost done. Question 7. What does it mean if you happen to be tied up in knots? To be tied up in knots. Is it A. To consistently, profoundly, intensely, personally feel incredibly anxious, deeply nervous, or genuinely entirely worried? Option B. To carefully, correctly, efficiently, completely, securely, safely, effectively, successfully, physically lock a wooden barrier. Or option C. To deliberately, aggressively, intentionally, repeatedly, purposely, strongly, openly, formally, verbally challenge a directive. Feel free to pause the podcast here for to be tied up in knots.
It's option A, feeling incredibly anxious or deeply nervous, like being tied up in knots deciding whether to take that overseas promotion.
And our final question, question 8. What happens when someone actively starts to drool over something? To drool over something. Is it option A, to physically, completely, entirely, effectively, suddenly, heavily, accidentally, terribly, dangerously, awkwardly spill water? Option B, to deeply, intensely, obviously, passionately, constantly, actively look at a highly specific object with pure admiration? Or option C, to intentionally and maliciously destroy something entirely without a second thought? Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer for to drool over something.
The answer is B, deeply and passionately looking at a specific object with admiration, just like the marketing team drooling over the new company car brochures.
Well done if you got all of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to briefly recap the 3 main areas we explored in today's critique. First, aligning the lesson's theme with its actual vocabulary.
Right.
Second, streamlining the instructional pacing by consolidating those breakout sessions.
Yeah, to avoid fragmentation.
And third, deepening the definitions to capture the nuance required by advanced learners.
Our actionable suggestions are to update the title or inject BBC comedy clips, to restructure the slides into larger learning blocks with cohesive role-play scenarios, and to add tonal and contextual comparisons to the idiom definitions.
Absolutely. We warmly invite the listener to implement these revisions and submit the updated lesson plan back in for another round of feedback in a future critique.
We'd love to see it.
Thanks for tuning in to this critique, and we'll catch you next time.